Thank you so much. Thank you for having me today. It's truly such an honor. We met at the United Nations event back in New York, and you're just so gracious and such an icon, honestly, and a style icon and everything in between. So thank you for having me and bridging this gap between generations, between disciplines, between creativity and institution. You're truly such an icon and trailblazer, so thank you for having me.
Thank you for having me. I was just beginning to think that the wonderful opening that we had should be Jamaica and Korea, US, sitting here doing this, and I could perhaps moderate.
Yes.
But go ahead.
I would love to start with a question that I've been wanting to ask you since I met you, honestly. Reading about your career, your incredible work over the last decades in education, and you've spent your career building at the level of nations and systems. So from that vantage point, I wonder, when a society truly invests in education, especially in creativity within education, what have you seen become possible that maybe wasn't before? And I ask that partly because my family is from South Korea, where one generation of that investment completely transformed the country.
Yeah, not an easy question, but I mean, I come from Nigeria, and I have to say that we had one of the best education systems when I went to school, and so therefore that curriculum was a whole of education. It was never just about science and tech and math and English, but it was also about the creative side. And what that did was enable you dream more possibilities when you were going to leave school. I think that's narrowed over the years, and more emphasis has been less creativity. That has been maybe what the market economy has demanded. And so you saw a country that really privileged lawyers and doctors, above perhaps the creatives. And the easiest way of seeing that is that I spoke to a Nigerian the other day, and he was saying to me, let me tell you the effects of education. In my family, I'm not considered a success. I mean, this is a really successful chef in New York who's probably earning more than doctors.
Wow.
because he was able to have a second chance at learning how to do something else, but actually trained as a lawyer. So, I'm thinking that the systems that we built for education of yesterday that no longer fits today is part of why we're here. And to have the courage to say, actually, we don't know. And with the technology that's coming and what's about to happen, what we do have to know is what's the common ground we need across the world that education must do. And upon that, each different country, region around the world develop an education system that's fit for them. I don't think that you can just have a one-size-fits-all, but there must be some common ground, and that common ground, I think, is giving the whole of education to someone.
Absolutely. I feel like there's such a balance to be found of nuance and between creativity and obviously discipline and system, because those things are so important. I know in your opening remarks you mentioned this idea of catch-up school, and every moment is so urgent and it counts. And I personally support and admire this NGO called Luminous Fund, which gives kids in sub-Saharan African countries a second chance at school. So they cover 3 years of curriculum in 10 months, and which I think is incredible. But when I spoke to the executive director of this organization, she actually did mention that joy, creativity, fun, these are not just romantic or, fun ideas as much as they are on their side strategic investments in actually retaining information for these children. And she mentioned that it wouldn't be possible without the play as a form of research, play as a form of retention. And I think that it is truly so inspiring to hear from such a high-level leader such as yourself that you still believe in the power of that, so thank you for that.
And I think that remember that all these things, when you say a whole of education, it's about building character too. It's about
Absolutely.
building not just the I in you, but the we in you, the sense of community, the respect for one another. I think along the way, the I sort of overtook the we. And you have communities now that find it very difficult to come back from trauma, from crises, the resilience piece. So education has to help that. And we're seeing a lot more issue, a lot more crisis with mental health, particularly in humanitarian settings, but not just that, we saw it coming out of COVID. In Africa, I can tell you that while we will not say we don't have our mental health issues, the fact we had community as our shock absorbers helped recovery. The fact that our faith and our culture was part of it helped. So we didn't downgrade them with value. We had a set of values that went into education, which then give, I think, strength of character to kids and to young people to survive.
Yeah, absolutely. I also think it'll be very interesting to see, I know you mentioned, and that AI is going to transform education, and we're at a very pivotal point where we can decide to be ahead of how it's going to be used versus allowing it to use us. And I think that, you know, when you talk about community, when you talk about being about the we, you know, I feel like, when it comes to AI, it's like, the communication skills, the character, the taste even, you know, the music you like, the ice cream you like, anything, you know, I think being your own person and being a part of the whole, they're equally important. And I think just emphasizing that continuing to stay human within education while also understanding how to use the tools, I think is such a nuanced topic of today.
It's hard. I mean, we want to use the technology and not it use us. But I think the first thing that the education system needs to do and to avail to people is a literacy of what is here and what is coming. I mean, I think we all know that we're talking about AI now, but you know, people are talking about quantum computing and many other different things that are going to come and affect us, and they're already here. So it's not like I'm going to plan beyond 2030 for that. It already would have done something different. So I think there needs to be an awful lot of literacy. There is fear, and they should, I think it's normal to fear things you don't know. So that literacy, that everyone knows what every acronym means, that everyone understands what it means when you say quantum computing, or that you say AI and AI's capacities, what you mean when you say an algorithm can affect the way you will receive a product or not, whether women in that algorithm will not be seen. And so therefore, whatever comes later, will leave you behind. And I think that these are the kind of things that are not so apparent. Probably for young people, and this is your way forward now, but for those that hold power and decision-making today, that's why the intergenerational conversation is really important, is that we also need to bring the likes of me into the room that understand that technology is already here, it's moving fast, get with it, otherwise that conversation can't happen. We can't reshape education for the future.
Absolutely. And of course, since this is a conversation about culture being a catalyst and it being a starting point of change, I do think it's, of course, a balance, or not even a balance, I think, as much as a fusion of what you just said, as well as continuing to value creativity, like you said. I mean, personally, the first time I ever sang in front of people was in a classroom, you know, and the joy of learning of learning music, it impacted me from the rest of my life. And I just think that artists and people who have a platform, and you know, the reason why I'm so honored to be here as well, I think we have a responsibility to build a bridge. You know, I think sometimes institutional change, it feels so daunting, if I'm going to be completely honest with you. But I think that allowing the current generation to understand truly how they think, and more importantly, how they feel about the issues of today through art, through music, through film, I feel like that is truly such a magical and powerful portal that can be very transformative.
I mean, education can't just be said to be for the job. We know that education is also about giving you the skills to have the confidence to be the entrepreneur that you need to be, and that if it's lifelong learning, that you've probably got several opportunities of work, and so you should be able to access that education to do so. So I think the big question today is that, you know, each and every one needs to think through education for what? What really do we want that education for? For many of us, I think in Africa, certainly in my country, it's about nation building. It's about going back to the very basics about what does this nation actually want to be, in all of its diversity, recognizing that, and building towards being a part of the global economy, being a part of, our one humanity. And not just about having an education that is talking about the opportunities outside. The opportunities inside are underestimated, and I think that, with them we can build a better world. It'll be more inclusive. The issues of inequalities become less if we can do that. But it is a big question. We have to have these conversations. I think we go to the matrix too quickly. We become very technical about education. And today, that's not what it's going to be about. And the example I give to everyone is that you have a world that is on the verge of this, of this massive change. When we went from the horse and cart to industrialization, it was major. The world changed the way it did everything. It's not the horse and cart, it was the car. Today, we're talking about electric cars. With this new era of technology, that's what's going to happen. To think that you're going to have a smart farm that is run from a room that oversees all of these fields, that it is a drone that plants your seeds. This is a very different world to what many continue today, but now this is the opportunity to leapfrog. So are we going to see we're not ready? No, we are ready. But how do you get that education there, the skill sets that you need through the whole of education, from early childcare all the way through to tertiary, and think it differently. I think, if we're having a discussion with young people, it also has to be with business, because if you're having an education that's going to connect you to the economies and to your aspirations, business needs to be in the room. They're moving pretty fast. The teachers need to be in the room. The public sector institutions need to be in the room.
Absolutely. I think that is a very underrated side of the conversation with creativity. I know we spoke backstage about, actually an economy being built around creativity and being able to contribute to the fruitfulness of a country. So I think that's a very important point.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
I'm just looking at where you are coming from and where you are today. I think one of the distinct things was your parents, from that enormous investment in education that made Korea what it is today, and they were very much a part of that, yet being immigrants and having a different education for their children, where did you see the added value or not? Where was the tensions and the plus and the minus of it?
I think it's actually super relevant to this conversation because obviously, there was such an investment and that allowed the country to transform. At the same time, I think it's the nuance of perfectionism versus the ability to discover. I would say that is the main thing in terms of, the tension between the two. But I think now we're in a place where we have so much more freedom to explore the joy and the nuance, and I'm very grateful to be a part of that. Thank you so much.
Very good. Thank
Truly.
you so much, too.